I'm Cindi McGee. Today I'm using items from the Woodland Wonder CreateAlong box to create this Woodland Daisy Paisley pendant. I started by conditioning and rolling some Primo Sculpey copper metallic clay, and I rolled it to a sheet, and you can make it whatever thickness you want. You can see about how thick mine is. And I'm going to use the Woodland Daisy rubber stamp that came in the Woodland Wonder CreateAlong box this month. I want to do a mica shift technique with this copper clay. I'm just going to place the rubber stamp over the sheet of clay, and then I'm going to apply a good amount of pressure to transfer the texture to the clay sheet. Now it's really pretty just as it is, but I wanted to fiddle a bit with the mica shift technique. I just love that technique. So I'm going to use my clay blade, and I'm very carefully going to shave off everything that's raised up off the surface so that the image is inset into that metallic clay. I'm not going to do the entire surface because I only need enough of it to fit the cutter I'm using. I took my roller and just placed it over it just to smooth it down a little bit more. And once I know I have enough, I'm ready to go ahead and cut it out. I'm using one of my Paisley cutters from my CreateAlong.com collection, and I'm just going to cut it out from the area that I created the mica shift. Then I'm going to set it aside and create my next paisley. For the second paisley, I conditioned and rolled some gold Primo Accents metallic clay up to about the same thickness. And this one I'm going to silkscreen with the matching silkscreen. This is the Woodland Daisy silkscreen. I'm going to place it with the orange side down against the clay and just press it down a bit to make sure it's in place. I like to take my roller and just kind of slide over it to make sure it's not going to move. And then I'm going to silkscreen it with some copper metallic paint over the gold clay. It is so pretty. I love the delicate details. I think this is one of my favorite new silkscreens. Make sure you wash your silkscreen right away to remove that paint so it's ready for use next time. I used the same paisley clay cutter to cut a paisley from the silkscreen sheet. I rolled an additional sheet of the gold clay for the backing for the paisleys, and I'm going to texture it with the same stamp. And I'm not going to cut it away and do the mica shift this time. I'm going to let the texture remain. I'm going to cut the background piece with a circle cutter that's just about the size that those two paisleys will be when they're placed up against each other. Then I flipped it over and I very carefully placed those paisleys onto it so that they nestle into each other. It's kind of a yin-yang effect. Once I had them arranged so that I liked them, I wanted to fill the centers, and I'm using some chunky copper glitter in the gold paisley, and I'm going to use some tiny gold microbeads in the copper paisley. I added some Bacon Bond into the middle space and then carefully applied the glitter and the microbeads. I use a soft paintbrush to make sure I get all that glitter into that opening and to brush away glitter that extends onto the silk screened clay where I don't want it to be. Bake it according to the manufacturer's instructions and let it cool. Once it was cool, it was time to fill in those little strips of base clay that were showing on two sides, on the top and bottom basically, of the Paislies, where they didn't quite completely fill the circle. To do that, I rolled some of the metallic clay and used my largest size etch and pearl tool and just put a little bacon bond on and then made a row of the pearls on either side. You can see I used the gold against the copper and the copper against the gold. I think it just adds a little bit more detail to the finished piece too. I learned how to make these simple bales from Cindy Holt. I just rolled more of the metallic copper clay and textured it with the same Woodland Daisy rubber stamp and cut it into a little rectangle and kind of curled one end. I'm going to use a little bit of bacon bond on the back just to make sure it adheres to the back, and then put the whole thing back in the oven to bake again. And here's a closer look at the completed Woodland Daisy Paisley pendant. Join me next time for more creative ideas made with products from CreateAlong.com.